And Kenya has doubled its investment in the Africa 50 Infrastructure Fund to 10 billion shillings. This in a bid to leverage on the fund to attract private sector investments to bridge the infrastructure funding deficit of 200 billion shillings annually in the continent. Mumbiwa Roy reports.
Your Excellency, I will ask you to...
The third Africa 50 Annual General Shareholders Meeting brought together delegates from 25 African countries, including ministries and other senior government officials, the Africa Development Bank and central banks of West African states. The meeting focusing on how the infrastructure financing gap of $108 billion can be financed by the private sector.
But new institutional models are needed to close Africa's huge infrastructure financing gap. Africa needs a lot more roads, rail, port, maritime and air transport facilities, as well as greater levels of investment in water, sanitation and energy to improve the quality of life of Africans.
President Uhuru Kenyatta pledging additional money towards the fund in a bid to attract more investors into the country with the hope that other member states will follow suit.
Kenya will double its current shareholding in Africa 50, raising its investment now to US dollars 100 million. The private sector must step up and help us close the infrastructure gap on the African continent.
In Kenya alone, we're talking about $2 billion. We can't meet that through our budgetary resources. We have to draw in the private sector, and this is why we are working with African 50 as a catalyst to bring private sector into many of these investments.
Among challenges facing the private sector investments in Africa include lack of bankable projects, high cost of financing, weak regulations and bureaucracies. Challenges that have seen their investments dip by more than half by 2016.
If African private capital is not willing to invest on the African continent, how can we expect anybody else to?
Kenya is banking on the Africa 50 Fund to attract investments to finance 3 electricity transmission lines to the western part of the country, generation of energy through gas, and the modernization of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Mumbiwa Roy, Citizen Live at 9.